How y'all doing? Hope you're doing okay. My son and I had the most fascinating, well, not fascinating, but an interesting conversation about men and women the other day. I don't know how this got started. I don't know how it got started, but anyway, he leaned back and said, "Why do women pretend to be stupid when you go out in public with a guy? Like you don't look around, you don't pay attention. I got to be in charge of everything. Why do women pretend to be stupid? Because I know they can do it when they're out and about and by themselves." And I said, "Well, I don't think they're pretending to be stupid." I said, "But I know when I was with your father, I, I put my brain on low. When we were out and about, my brain is on low." uh, and I remember we were at the airport one day and we were going somewhere, maybe Australia or something. And we got off the plane and I'm just wandering about and I don't know what I'm doing. And he just stood there and I just started walking off. And he just stood there looking and I realized he wasn't with me. And I said, "What are you standing there for?" He says, "I'm looking at you walking in the wrong direction." And I said, "Well, why didn't you say something?" He says, "I don't try to understand what you're doing. You fly all the time. Why is it you don't know where you're going? Why are you just walking around like that?" And I said, "Yeah, because my brain is on low because I'm with you." You're my man. I feel safe and protected. I don't have to think. That's my dog outside. I said, "I don't have to think." And my son said, "Well, that ain't fair. Why would you put all the pressure on us to do all of this when we're out and about? You're capable. Wake up." And I said, "Well, now wait a minute." I said, "First of all, y'all always talking about y'all want to be leading and all this kind of stuff. To lead is to be responsible. That's number one. That's not what went on in my house. I ain't gonna lie. He had what he was good at. I had what I was good at. And we had one thing we neither one of us could do, which was cook. But I ended up, you know, only gave him food poisoning the one time. But anyway, oh, there's dirt on my shirt. I'm sorry. But anyway, I told my son, I'm sorry. I told my son, I said, "Look, when he's home, his brain is on low with a lot of stuff. He doesn't wonder what's in the kitchen, what's the groceries, what we're gonna have for dinner, who, what needs to be prepared, what needs to be, school and forms and where everybody was. I was doing logistical work for all of that. In addition to being a judge on a regular bench, I came home and I remember one time the jury went out on a trial and I ain't had nothing for dinner. And it was Friday and there was a grocery store right across from the courthouse. I jumped out my robe, jumped in my car, grocery shopped, and ran into the prosecutor in there because he was buying something or soda. And she said, "She does it all." But I'm grocery shopping while the jury's out, because I'm responsible for all that. I'm responsible for having all of that. Are you taking your medicine? Are you running out of it? So his brain is on low in a whole lot of areas at the home. His brain is never on low with respect to security because that's his gig. And I said, how's that for an explanation? And one thing I like about this particular son, well, I love all my sons, but for different reasons, well, for the same reasons and different reasons. But this guy, if you give him a concept and he'll roll it around in his brain and he thinks he'll accept it. He says, I see. I said, like I'm head of medical. I make them do this, go to the doctor, make sure you have don't I bug you about your high blood pressure? Yes, you do. I said, "So you're head of security now, and so everybody has a job to do, and don't don't limit yourself to every circumstance. We got to give as much evenly, but in every circumstance, you got to give the best that you got, and you also got to give the other person a break. It's not a zero-sum situation. It's not a victory if one person gets their way all the time and the other person doesn't. Uh, what you have in that circumstance is a whittled away person, you know. So it's like you gotta remember every time you say, I do this for them, you gotta think what they do for you. And that way, the relationship is easier because you bicker less about the things that aren't important. It took me 20 years to figure that out, but it did. And having said that, I want to answer LR's question. And LR is like a lot of women I know. No, it isn't like that's not true. A lot of women I heard from or saw in divorce court who basically said in a very, 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 very long letter, uh, I try so hard to make him happy and I never seem able to manage it. And then she gave me some examples of very small things that she's always trying to do. And then once she gets it right, he complains about something else. And once she gets that right, he complains about something else. And then once if she acknowledges an error, he says, and an apology is never sufficient. He can't forgive her. It's just you have to live it and live it and live it and live it and live it because you made that error. And I've seen this a lot on divorce court. And Eric and I flirted with it for a little while. And during that 18 months where we weren't getting along, because my was just, we're not getting along, so I'm going to tell him yes about everything. I'm going to please him. I'm not going to have any wants or desires. I'm going to tell him yes about everything. Made him mad because I'm a thoughtful person, and I couldn't understand why he wasn't happy that I was letting him make all the decisions, and he couldn't understand why I was, why he felt he had a wife he wanted. Because I chose to solve the problem in the wrong way, and he didn't even see what the problem was. And that happened because we were moving and everything. It was a high pressure time, and in high pressure times, you're not very thoughtful about what you're doing, and you can get into habits of disrespect towards one another, and that's what we were doing. But back to LR. When people are insecure about either themselves or you, they try to make you. A couple things could be happening. Let me say that. Number one, he could be just one of those people who blames other people for his mistakes. And people who blame other people for their own, don't blame themselves for their mistakes, have to spend a lot of time making you the error. And there are things you can do about that. There are error hoarders. I am an error hoarder, but I hoard my errors, not other people's. Now, people who error hoard within the context of a couple, I had a couple of them. It's one woman I remember and a couple of dudes, Mr. Berger, but they're not looking for you to get it right. They're looking to be angry with you. And they're not looking to solve the problem. And you could have a 1,000 grains of rice on a plate, and he asks you to bring it across the room, and those 1,000 grains of plate, and one drops, and then he talks about that one for 20 days. You never get over the one that drops. The 999 that you got there don't count. Now, all air hoarders are air hoarders for different reasons. I hoard my errors because I'm not a perfectionist, but I'm just hard on myself because I have a deep lazy streak, and I know I could do far more than I'm doing. And every time I don't know. my mother always tell me, pick at yourself, pick at yourself, pick at yourself, pick at yourself. And that's important to let's just, oh, I could do this a little better, I could do that a little better, I could do this a little better. But I think I've taken it too far. I tend to be extreme with it. I'm so sorry about this stain. But when we weren't getting along, he would hoard my errors because he was unhappy and he needed a reason to be unhappy, and I was the most convenient one. And that's what happens often. It's out of convenience. I'm discontent, therefore blame the nearest person, or error hoarders just happen to be somebody who feels insecure or small. So in order, or not safe with the person that they're with, so in order to make them feel safer, like so that person won't leave or do anything, if you make them smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, you feel more secure in keeping them. Well, I got him to do that. Now get out. Go! We've been practicing. But anyway, it makes them feel better to make you feel smaller. So they collect and they hoard their errors, and they keep it and they look for more. And it's like you can never please them. And there's a lot of things you can do, but you don't, I can't tell you what to do. There are a lot of different things you can do. But it depends on, we sat down and talked about it. And I started the conversation. And I said something like, it seems that no matter how hard I try, all you see are the things that I do wrong. And I did it, and we were in a good day, we were in a good mood. That's the timing, tone, and topic. We were having a good afternoon. And I was smiling, I was nice about it so he wouldn't be it. And I said, and then I gave him a couple of examples, and I said, I just don't understand. And he didn't say anything. And he was thinking about it. And he was going through a lot because he had left Cleveland and he left his business, and now he's out there in this other place, and his wife was running here, they're in Yan, going to LA and Atlanta and New York, and he was sitting there just, and ooh, and I didn't realize it. I didn't realize it. He didn't realize it. And then we had, he was a good guy who got into a bad habit. And I did the mommy method because mama used to call and say, "This girl, this is what you need to do." I love having, Lucy loved having her. She was just a problem solving chick. But to LR, if he's a decent guy under pressure, a conversation may be good enough. Maybe you can show him the Burger Show, Burger versus Burger on divorce court. That gives you a good idea of what an error hoarder, how an error hoarder makes you feel. I don't know if that's going to work or not, but that is an option. Or you can stand. My mother also told me just stand my ground. She says spread your legs wide and stand like a tree, and he'll have to change how he does things because you've changed. You're not apologizing. You're not this, and you're at your other thing, and after a while, and then we had a final conversation about it one day. It took us 18 months, and he said, "I'm so sorry about that. I never meant to." And I said, "I know." And then mom says, "You don't mention it again." And we didn't. I am so sorry about my stomach. It's just rattling and tattling. But anyway, the one thing I just don't want you to do is to internalize the errors he hoards. I want you to remember how wonderful you are, and you need to do things that are unrelated to him that reinforce your belief in yourself, and start to work on him. slowly but surely try a little bit of the conversation tactic. If that don't work, show them, give them, examples to watch the divorce court. If that don't work, uh, take back your power bit by bit. Why are you yelling at me about this one cup? Look at the 30 over there that are clean. I'm imperfect, aren't you? But I don't know who he is. That's why. That's why it was so much easier on divorce court, because I could see both sides, and I could do. That's I struggle here so much because I don't see. But I would love to be able to see both sides. Ooh, what if you and your man are having a problem? You email me separate letters. That would be fun. I don't know. It might be too complicated, and you usually, But anyway, that's what we were talking about, men and women, and then we ended it with, he was talking about other things that women tend to do, and I said, listen, honey, that's not a woman thing. That's a Gen, not boomer thing. You know what I mean? Uh, he got on me too about saying, well, the one thing you are, just like those other women, you wanted somebody over 6 foot tall, and I did. That was my only superficial criteria. The fact that he happened to be fine as all get out was not was was not was not the reason. I said, he goes, but you married him because of all of those quote unquote 6 foot, this, that. And I said he was 6 foot, but he, didn't have a whole lot of money. He had 4 teenage children. I said, I had to accept all of that. And and it wasn't superficial at all. Yes, the 6 foot thing was a real thing, but you ought to thank me for that, because you're 5'10", 5'11", or whatever you are. I'm 5'1". My sister's 4'10". My grandmother was 4'8". My daddy was 5'2". I had to give my sons a shot. So that was one artificial limit I did, but I didn't limit. He had to have all this and that and the other. Certainly having 4 children was not on the list. But he goes, then why him? And I say, because he vibrated correctly. I don't know. Whatever vibration level he was on, I found quite soothing. It's just something about him that I trusted him, and I knew I'd be safe. And he was straight as an arrow. You know what I mean? He was old school to his core. And talk about feeling safe. And then we shared the same sense of humor, which is extraordinarily important. We used to talk about other people all the time. Do you see that over there? But anyway, LR, don't let it seep into your soul, and don't believe the hype. That's the most important thing. And start doing things unrelated to him that remind you of the wonderful person that you are. And that the fact that you got Hines instead of Hunts, or Hunts instead of Hines. I'm fascinated by my hair of late. Once that woman told me not to use conditioner, and I stopped putting relaxer in it about a year and a half ago, because I read all this stuff about it. I'm not dying to look good. So I wash it, but I don't put a lot of conditioner on it, and I hot comb it. I'm probably ruining it. And there's no particular reason why I should be doing this in public. But I don't care. Y'all have a good day. It's hot in here.